Good evening, wanderers of the unknown, and welcome back to Twisted Mysteries. Tonight, we open doors that were never meant to be unlocked, from decaying asylums to cursed castles and forests where even the wind seems afraid to move. These are not tales from fiction, but real places where fear clings to the walls and something waits in the dark. These 58 haunted locations aren't just marked by history, they're haunted by it. So, light a candle, check the locks, and step carefully. Because once you enter, not every place lets you leave. The Stanley Hotel, nestled in the quiet mountain town of Estes Park, Colorado. The Stanley Hotel stands as a monument to grandeur and something else entirely. Built in 1909 by Freeland Oscar Stanley, this colonial revival masterpiece was intended as a peaceful mountain retreat. But over the decades, it became known for something far less restful: its reputation for unexplained phenomena. Guests have reported hearing piano music in the empty ballroom, children laughing in unoccupied corridors, and shadows moving without cause. Room 217, in particular, carries a curious energy, so much so that it inspired author Stephen King to write The Shining after staying there. His brief visit sparked one of the most iconic horror stories of the 20th century, but the real-life mystery remains unsolved. Hotel staff recount experiences with apparitions dressed in early 20th century clothing. Paranormal investigators have captured EVPs and thermal anomalies, especially in the concert hall and the basement tunnels. Yet the hotel's operations continue, blending luxury hospitality with an undercurrent of the unknown. The Stanley isn't abandoned. It's thriving, but within its charm lies a subtle sense of disquiet, as if the past has decided not to move on. And each night, when the wind picks up in the Rockies, some say the silence carries more than just air. 2. Eastern State Penitentiary. In the heart of Philadelphia stands the crumbling silhouette of Eastern State Penitentiary, once the most expensive and advanced prison in the world. Opened in 1829, its revolutionary radial design emphasized solitary confinement as a method of reform. Each inmate was housed in total isolation, denied human contact, and forced into silence, a concept that, over time, gave way to psychological unraveling. The thick stone walls and vaulted ceilings now echo with more than just architectural grandeur. Countless reports from former guards, visitors, and paranormal researchers speak of disembodied whispers, weeping, and footsteps in locked corridors. Some claim to have seen shadowy figures darting between cells. Cell Block 12 is infamous for ghostly laughter. Cell Block 4 is known for flickering lights and cold spots that have no source. The prison closed in 1971, left to decay, and yet the past never seemed to fully retreat. Its rusted cell doors, peeling paint, and forgotten relics create an atmosphere heavy with memory and something more. Tours today invite guests to confront this lingering presence, not just in the echoes of history, but in the chilling sense that the solitude once forced on inmates now haunts the structure itself. Eastern State is no longer a place of punishment, but it remains a place of unrest. 3. Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Perched on a hill overlooking Louisville, Kentucky, Waverly Hills Sanatorium is more than an abandoned hospital. It is a lasting monument to both human resilience and tragedy. Opened in 1910 to treat tuberculosis, the facility soon swelled beyond its capacity during the outbreak of the White Plague. Thousands died within its walls, many carried out through the infamous body chute, a tunnel designed to discreetly remove the dead. Today, Waverly stands hollowed by time, but filled with the weight of its past. Paranormal investigators speak of unexplained voices, shadow figures, and sudden temperature drops. Room 502, where a nurse was found hanging decades ago, is particularly notorious. Visitors describe a pressing sense of despair and unseen eyes watching from the dark. Despite efforts to preserve the site, Waverly's decaying halls seem to resist silence. Tour groups frequently report being touched, hearing whispers in empty rooms, or seeing fleeting figures vanish around corners. Some believe the hospital's energy has imprinted itself into the structure, memories replaying on an endless loop. What remains at Waverly Hills isn't just history. It's a question, unanswered and waiting in the dark. 4. The Queen Mary, once a luxurious ocean liner. The RMS Queen Mary now rests permanently in Long Beach, California, serving as a floating hotel and museum. But below its polished decks lies a legacy far less refined. From 1936 to 1967, the ship carried royalty, celebrities, and soldiers, but also saw death, accidents, and wartime trauma. The most infamous location on board is Stateroom B340, where guests have reported violent knocks on doors, water turning on by itself, and ghostly apparitions. Deep within the ship, the engine room, specifically hatch door, was the site of a fatal accident. Engineers have spoken of seeing a shadowy figure near the site, often accompanied by sudden drops in temperature. Throughout the Queen Mary, footsteps echo where no one walks. Whispers brush the air, and cold spots appear in sealed compartments. Even skeptics find it hard to dismiss the ship's charged atmosphere. Navy records, crew logs, and personal accounts all add to the credibility of its haunted reputation. Though it no longer sails, the Queen Mary carries passengers still, some with no intention of disembarking. 5. The Myrtles Plantation, nestled among moss-draped oaks in St. Francisville, Louisiana. The Myrtles Plantation embodies Southern charm, but beneath its genteel facade lies a deeply unsettled past. Built in 1796, the estate is linked to stories of betrayal, murder, and tragedy. The most enduring legend centers around a former slave named Chloe, who was allegedly hanged after poisoning the family's children. Her spirit, wearing a green turban, is said to appear near the veranda in mirrors. Visitors have also reported seeing ghostly children playing in the hallway and hearing footsteps pacing the upstairs rooms when no one is there. Photographs taken by tourists and paranormal researchers often contain unexplainable shadows, faces, and figures. Cold spots frequently appear in warm rooms, and the antique piano sometimes plays a single note repeatedly, despite being untouched. Despite, or perhaps because of, its haunting reputation, the plantation remains open to guests, inviting them to stay overnight. Some leave convinced they've encountered something beyond explanation. At the Myrtles, beauty and grief intertwine, and in the quiet stillness of night, the stories continue to unfold. 6. Monte Cristo Homestead in the small town of Junee, New South Wales, Australia. Monte Cristo Homestead stands as one of the country's most infamous haunted residences. Built in 1884 by wealthy landowner Christopher Crawley, the home represents a legacy of affluence, but also of mysterious deaths, tragedy, and alleged cruelty. The stories that persist within these walls are unsettling. A maid is said to have fallen or been pushed from the balcony. A stable boy reportedly burned to death in the stables. One mentally ill man, locked in an outhouse for years, was found chained and barely alive. These events, whether recorded fact or deeply rooted legend, have left an indelible impression. Visitors describe hearing disembodied voices, ghostly footsteps on the iron staircase, and faces appearing at the windows. The drawing room is said to house an energy that repels some guests entirely. One upstairs bedroom, reportedly the scene of a death, remains so active that few stay in it for long. Monte Cristo has been preserved as a museum, yet resists simply being history. Tourists leave with photographs showing shapes that weren't there. Others report overwhelming nausea or chills, even on warm days. Here, the past doesn't sleep. It waits just beyond the threshold. 7. Aokigahara Forest at the foot of Japan's Mount Fuji lies a forest as beautiful as it is unsettling. Aokigahara, often called the Sea of Trees, is a dense woodland known for its serenity, but also for its silence, so thick it feels unnatural. Beneath its leafy canopy, sound is muffled, trails vanish, and even the wind seems cautious. While Aokigahara has a tragic association with suicide, what draws global attention is the haunting energy reported by visitors and locals alike. Compasses fail, electronic devices glitch, and some hikers describe the eerie sensation of being watched. Others speak of distant voices calling through the trees when no one else is around. Japanese folklore suggests yurei, restless spirits, haunt the area. Some believe the forest is cursed. Ribbons and markers are often tied to branches, left by those trying not to lose their way or by those hoping to be found. Despite warning signs and increased patrols, the forest continues to attract those seeking isolation. But many leave feeling marked by its presence, whether they've encountered something directly or simply stood within its heavy silence. In Aokigahara, the line between sorrow and the supernatural blurs beneath the shadows. 8. Poveglia Island. Drifting in the Venetian lagoon, between Venice and Lido, lies Poveglia Island, a place long shrouded in fear and silence. Its dark history begins as a quarantine station during outbreaks of the plague in the 18th century. Thousands were brought here to die, and their ashes still mingle with the soil. Later, in the 20th century, it housed a mental asylum, where rumors of inhumane experiments and suicides now echo through the ruins. The island is officially off-limits, and for good reason. Locals refuse to go near it, calling it cursed. Those who've trespassed speak of whispers in the wind, cries in the night, and cold, suffocating dread. The decaying hospital, overgrown with vines, houses rusted equipment and forgotten beds. Some claim the spirit of the asylum's doctor, who reportedly leapt from the bell tower, still roams the grounds. Despite numerous attempts to sell or repurpose the land, every project has failed. Even in daylight, the atmosphere is oppressive, heavy with what feels like the weight of forgotten souls. Poveglia remains abandoned, but not empty. 9. Bodie Ghost Town. High in California's Sierra Nevada, Bodie stands frozen in time. Once a booming gold rush town in the late 1800s, it was home to miners, gamblers, and gunslingers. But when the boom went bust, Bodie was left to decay, its buildings intact, its secrets undisturbed. Now a preserved state historic park, the town has earned a reputation for being not only haunted, but cursed. Visitors who take anything, no matter how small, often report misfortune until the stolen item is returned. Former residents are said to linger in the schoolhouse, the old hotel, and among the weathered homes. Park rangers report lights in windows, doors that open and close, and laughter echoing down empty streets. In the abandoned church, some claim to feel a presence pressing on their chest, as though judgment itself waits in the pews. Bodie's silence is deceiving. Beneath the dust and splinters lie stories not quite finished. 10. Chateau de Brissac. Towering over the French countryside, Chateau de Brissac is the tallest chateau in the Loire Valley, and possibly the most haunted. Its halls are as lavish as they are storied, with tapestries, gilded ceilings, and chandeliers that have seen centuries pass. But amid the grandeur walks a figure known only as La Dame Verte, the Green Lady. Legend tells of Charlotte, an unfaithful wife murdered within the chateau by her husband in the 15th century. Her body was hidden, but her spirit remained. Guests have seen her spectral form in green robes, her face said to be hollow, twisted by her final scream. Even the owners acknowledge her presence. They report moaning in the early hours, footsteps on the stone staircases, and the feeling of someone watching as you sleep. Despite this, the chateau remains inhabited and open to visitors. It's a place where elegance meets the unexplained, and where history's shadows still walk beside the living. 11. Raynham Hall. Deep in the Norfolk countryside, Raynham Hall stands as a symbol of stately grandeur and one of England's most enduring ghost stories. The 17th century estate has been home to the Townsend family for generations, but it's best known for a single, iconic image, the Brown Lady, captured in a famous photograph descending the grand staircase in 1936. The identity of the Brown Lady is widely believed to be Dorothy Walpole, sister of Britain's first prime minister. Married into the Townsend family under scandalous circumstances, Dorothy was said to have been confined to the hall until her death. Some say her sorrow anchored her spirit to the estate. Witnesses, including notable military officers and photographers, have described a female apparition in a brown brocade dress, her face illuminated yet featureless. Sudden drops in temperature, whispers in long corridors, and footsteps on the stair have all been reported. Despite renovations and generations of occupancy, the lady remains. Staff and guests alike describe an invisible presence that shifts the mood of a room. Though skeptical minds suggest explanations, the sightings persist across decades. At Raynham, history is carefully preserved, but the past may be walking its halls still. 12. Ancient Ram tucked in a quiet village of Watton-under-Edge, England. The Ancient Ram Inn is a modest, timber-framed building that holds a reputation far larger than its frame suggests. Built in 1145 on a site believed to be a former pagan burial ground, the inn's history is steeped in layers of unsettling folklore. Once a priest's residence, later a pub, and eventually a private home, the inn is said to be home to a host of spirits. Visitors report encounters with ghostly children, monks, and even a supposed demonic entity. The bishop's room, in particular, is infamous, so active that some have refused to enter, citing feelings of being watched, touched, or even choked. The current owner, who lived in the house until his passing, claimed to have uncovered evidence of ritual sacrifices and pagan altars buried beneath the floor. Paranormal teams visiting the site have documented cold spots, electronic interference, and recordings of disembodied voices. Unlike many haunted locations, the Ancient Ram Inn has no grand corridors or opulent halls, just cramped rooms, slanted floors, and thick shadows that seem to breathe. Here, the line between history and haunting feels perilously thin. 13. Bangor Fort surrounded by the Aravalli Hills in Rajasthan. India, Bangor Fort lies in ruins, but it speaks louder than ever. Built in the 17th century, the once majestic fortress is now a preserved archaeological site under government protection. But after sunset, it becomes strictly off-limits. Local legend blames the desolation on a curse. A tantric sorcerer, infatuated with a princess of Bangor, was spurned and retaliated with dark magic. In the battles that followed, the fort's people perished, and the town was never inhabited again. Fact or folklore, the site remains eerily still. Travelers report an oppressive silence, sudden dizziness, or a sense of being followed. Some claim to have seen shadowy figures or heard screams echo through the ruins. Even during the day, there is a weight to the air, as though time itself hesitates. Despite no verified paranormal evidence, the Indian government has posted warning signs forbidding entry after dark, citing unusual activity. Bangor may be abandoned, but what lingers behind is not entirely empty. 14. Dragsholm Castle. Among the rolling landscapes of Denmark sits Dragsholm Castle, at once a luxurious hotel and one of the most haunted buildings in Scandinavia. Built in the 13th century and later used as a prison, the castle is said to host over 100 spirits, each tied to a different piece of its long and troubled past. The most famous ghost is the White Lady, believed to be the daughter of a nobleman who was imprisoned and bricked into a wall for loving a commoner. Her skeleton was found during renovations in the 20th century, lending credibility to the tale. The Grey Lady, another frequent visitor, is thought to be a former servant who continues to walk the halls in service. Perhaps the most disturbing is the ghost of the Earl of Bothwell, who was held prisoner in the castle for years until his death. Witnesses describe hearing the clatter of hooves in the courtyard, though no horses remain. Today, guests sleep in lavish rooms, dine in Camelot halls, and walk stone corridors where footsteps echo a little too closely. Dragsholm welcomes modern comfort, but history, it seems, refuses to rest. 15. The Sally House in the small town of Atchison, Kansas, stands an unassuming home known simply as the Sally House. With its white siding and modest front porch, it gives little away at first glance. But what happens inside has drawn the attention of seasoned paranormal investigators worldwide. The legend centers around a girl named Sally, who allegedly died during a failed emergency appendectomy in the home when it served as a doctor's residence. But the entity, or entities, at work here show signs of something far more complex. Former tenants reported unexplained fires, flying objects, and scratches appearing on their bodies. Male residents, in particular, seem to experience aggression, scratches, sudden anger, and unsettling dreams. Paranormal teams captured EVP recordings, thermal anomalies, and sudden equipment malfunctions. Rooms would turn icy in minutes or heavy with an unseen presence. Despite multiple investigations, no one has conclusively identified the source. The house remains open for overnight stays, but many visitors leave early, disturbed not just by fear, but by something harder to explain. Whatever exists inside the Sally house is not passive. It reacts, and perhaps it remembers. 16. The Lemp Mansion in the heart of St. Louis, Missouri. The Lemp Mansion is more than just an elegant 19th century home. It's a place steeped in wealth, sorrow, and a legacy of unexplained phenomena. Once home to the Lemp family, pioneers of the brewing industry, the mansion became the backdrop to a string of suicides that spanned generations. Between 1904 and 1949, members of the Lemp family took their own lives within the mansion's walls. Each death left behind echoes, and today, visitors and staff report a persistent unease, cold spots, moving objects, and a sensation of being followed through the halls. Some say the third floor, once servants' quarters and later the site of Charles Lemp's reclusive final years, holds the strongest activity. Others point to the basement, nicknamed the Gates of Hell, where the family's brewery once connected through underground tunnels. Despite the mansion's transformation into a restaurant and inn, the hauntings haven't ceased. Apparitions are seen in mirrors, doors slam without cause, and faint voices carry through empty rooms. In a Lemp Mansion, the weight of inheritance lingers, not just in the history books, but in the quiet spaces between footsteps. 17. Old Changi Hospital in the far reaches of Singapore lies the decaying structure of Old Changi Hospital, a relic of colonial times and wartime horror. Built in 1935 by the British, it served as a military hospital. But during the Japanese occupation in World War II, it reportedly became a site of torture under the notorious Kempeitai military police. Now abandoned, the hospital's corridors are choked with vines and silence. Broken windows filter dim light across blood-red stains that time has failed to erase. Locals and explorers report sightings of shadowy figures, sounds of crying, and feelings of suffocation. Some claim they've seen uniformed spirits still standing guard. The old mortuary is especially feared. Rumors tell of a presence that stalks visitors, whispering unintelligibly. EMF detectors spike, batteries die suddenly, and some people exit with no memory of entire stretches of their visit. Though officially off-limits, thrill seekers and ghost hunters continue to enter. They often leave changed, some shaken, others silently reflective. At Old Changi, the past has not been buried. It lingers, stitched into every cracked wall and creaking door. 18. Banff Springs Hotel, rising out of the Canadian Rockies like a stone sentinel. The Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel is a blend of architectural beauty and restless energy. Built in 1888, it's known for its grandeur, but also for ghost stories whispered since its earliest days. Among the spirits said to roam the hotel is the Ghost Bride, a woman who died tragically on her wedding day after falling down a marble staircase. Guests and staff have reported seeing her in a flowing white gown, gliding through the ballroom and vanishing without a trace. Another figure said to haunt the hotel is Sam the Bellman, a former employee so devoted to his job that many claim he never left. Some visitors recount calls from a bellhop who never arrives, or luggage that's delivered by unseen hands. But the most mysterious tale concerns room 873. Guests claimed violent disturbances, and the room was eventually sealed off. Today, only a smooth section of wall remains where the door once stood. The Banff Springs continues to welcome guests in luxury, but for some, the most enduring presence is felt only in hushed moments between floorboards and flickering lights. 19. Beechworth Lunatic Asylum in Victoria, Australia. Beechworth Lunatic Asylum sits in solemn quiet, its sandstone facade weathered by decades of pain, isolation, and unresolved grief. Operating from 1867 to 1995, it was once one of the largest psychiatric institutions in the country, housing thousands of patients under now antiquated practices. Conditions inside were grim. Patients could be committed on little evidence and subjected to treatments now considered barbaric. Electroshock therapy, isolation cells, and early lobotomies formed part of daily life. Of the 9,000 patients said to have died here, many were buried in unmarked graves nearby. Since closing, the asylum has become a hotspot for paranormal investigators. Shadows reportedly dart between rooms. Voices echo down empty halls, and windows open without cause. Guides speak of footsteps following them through the infirmary and of names whispered in the dark. The Grevillea wing, used for the most violent cases, carries a chilling energy. Visitors describe feelings of dread, nausea, and time distortion. Beechworth isn't just a building, it's a reservoir of human suffering. And in that silence, something remains. 20. The Queen Mary, expanded, docked in Long Beach, California. The RMS Queen Mary once sailed the Atlantic with regal elegance. But beneath her polished decks and grand ballrooms lies a history marked by war, death, and whispers of the otherworldly. Since retiring in 1967, the ship has become known not just as a hotel, but as one of America's most haunted locations. During World War II, the Queen Mary served as a troop ship, earning the nickname the Gray Ghost. Tragedy struck when it collided with the HMS Curacao, killing over 300 sailors. Some say the spirits of those lost still wander the ship's bow. Guests report phantom footsteps in empty corridors, sudden drops in temperature, and apparitions dressed in 1940s attire. The engine room, once a scene of an accidental death, is a focal point of activity. Lights flicker and figures vanish as quickly as they appear. The first-class swimming pool, long dry, is another hotspot. Voices echo, wet footprints appear, and a little girl is often seen holding a stuffed bear. The Queen Mary rests in the harbor, but her decks seem to drift between past and present, where time and something else has refused to let go. 21. Leap Castle in the heart of Ireland. Atop a windswept hill in County Offaly stands Leap Castle, a fortress with a violent past and a lingering darkness. Built in the 13th century, it was the seat of the O'Carroll clan, known for their brutal feuds and acts of treachery. One of the most infamous episodes took place inside the chapel, now known as the Bloody Chapel. During a power struggle, one O'Carroll brother murdered another, a priest, mid-mass. Centuries later, visitors claim to hear chanting, screams, and footsteps around the ruin. But Leap Castle holds more than the spirits of betrayed kin. In 1900, workers discovered an oubliette, a hidden dungeon, behind a wall in the chapel. Inside were the remains of hundreds, impaled on wooden spikes. The weight of that discovery still seems to permeate the air. The castle is also home to a lesser-understood presence, the Elemental. Described as a shadowy, foul-smelling figure with a sense of ancient malevolence, it's not linked to a human spirit, but something older, perhaps tied to the land or to rituals once practiced here. Leap Castle is privately owned and under slow restoration, but those who visit speak of a silence that feels unnatural, of unseen eyes watching from darkened halls. And in that silence, something waits. 22. Tower of London towering over the River Thames. The Tower of London is a fortress of stone and shadow. Its walls have held monarchs, traitors, and prisoners for nearly 1,000 years. And its history is soaked in betrayal, execution, and lingering unrest. Built by William the Conqueror in 1078, the tower has served many purposes: royal palace, armory, and prison. But its legacy is bloodstained. And Boleyn, Henry VIII's ill-fated queen, was beheaded here. Some say she still roams the grounds, clutching her head in spectral silence. Guards have reported sightings of ghostly figures, including the White Lady, seen waving from the battlements, and the princes in the tower, two young boys whose mysterious disappearance in the 15th century remains unsolved. Their shadows are said to linger, heard playing or seen staring from windows. The Salt Tower, one of the oldest sections, is a place of particular unease. Visitors feel watched, cold, or overcome with grief. Even the ravens, guardians of the realm according to legend, sometimes react to what the eye cannot see. At the Tower of London, history is not confined to the past. It walks beside the present, cloaked in silence and waiting in the dark. 23. Island of the Dolls in the canals of Xochimilco, just south of Mexico City, lies a place both surreal and unsettling: the Island of the Dolls. It's not a theme park, nor an art installation. It is a floating memorial of decay and whispers. The island's caretaker, Don Julian Santana Barrera, began hanging dolls from the trees in the 1950s. He claimed to have found the body of a drowned girl nearby, and soon after, discovered a doll floating in the water. He hung it in her memory. But one doll became dozens, then hundreds, weathered, broken, eyeless. Visitors report an eerie stillness on the island, broken only by the creak of doll limbs swaying in the breeze. Some swear the dolls move or whisper. Others feel a watchful presence following them through the thickets. Don Julian himself drowned in the same canal decades later, near where he claimed to have found the girl. Some believe he became part of the legend he spent his life curating. Even today, new dolls are added by those seeking blessings or forgiveness. And among the decaying faces, something old and quiet lingers. The dolls do not speak, but they never stop watching. 24. Pittock Mansion, perched above Portland, Oregon, with sweeping views of the city. The Pittock Mansion is a symbol of elegance and a quiet enigma. Built in 1914 for Henry and Georgiana Pittock, founders of the Oregonian newspaper, the house is a marvel of French Renaissance design. Yet, it's not just its architecture that draws visitors. Though both Pittocks died within 5 years of moving in, their presence is said to remain. Visitors and staff describe doors opening and closing on their own, faint footsteps in empty halls, and the smell of roses, Georgiana's favorite, suddenly filling the air. The mansion fell into disrepair in the 1960s after a storm nearly destroyed it. During restoration, workers reported tools disappearing and disembodied voices guiding or warning them. Photographs, taken inside, sometimes show figures where none were present. Despite these accounts, the energy of the house is not malevolent. It feels more like a memory looping, an echo of affection, loss, and permanence. Today, the mansion operates as a museum. Guests come to admire the view, but leave with stories of something more. In the silence between creaking floorboards, the past gently reaches forward, and sometimes it touches back. 25. The Whaley House, standing in the heart of Old Town, San Diego. The Whaley House appears like any well-preserved 19th century residence. But within its walls lies a reputation that has earned it the title of one of America's most haunted homes. Built in 1857 by Thomas Whaley, the house sits on land once used for public executions. In fact, the gallows once stood where the archway now rests, a place guests report as unusually cold, even on the warmest days. The Whaley family themselves suffered a series of tragedies. Infant deaths, suicides, and financial ruin seem to plague them. Visitors today speak of hearing children crying, footsteps in empty halls, and the sound of a piano playing faintly, though no one is near. Thomas and Anna Whaley are often seen, dressed in period clothing, moving through their home as though time never caught them. Their daughter Violet, who took her life after a troubled marriage, is sometimes sensed upstairs, her sadness clinging to the air. Even skeptics leave the Whaley house changed. The walls don't speak, but they hold on to everything. And once you step through its doors, something might hold on to you. 26. Poveglia Island in the Venetian Lagoon, just a short boat ride from the grandeur of Venice, lies a small, forbidden island, Poveglia. Its silence is absolute, its ruins slowly succumbing to nature. But its history is anything but quiet. Used as a quarantine station during plague outbreaks, Poveglia became a place of despair. Thousands of infected were sent here. Many never returned. When they died, their bodies were burned or buried en masse. The soil, they say, still holds traces of ash and bone. In the early 20th century, the island was repurposed as a mental asylum. Rumors tell of experimental procedures, harsh treatments, and a doctor who reportedly threw himself, or was thrown, off the bell tower. Since then, visitors claim to hear the bell tolling, even though it's long been removed. Locals avoid the island. Fishermen steer clear. And those who've dared trespass speak of whispers in the fog, cold hands in empty corridors, and a sensation of overwhelming dread. Poveglia has been called one of the most haunted places on Earth. But it isn't theatrics, it's silence, and what waits inside it that unnerves. The island is closed to the public, perhaps for good reason. 27. The ancient Ram Inn, the quiet English village of Watton-under-Edge, Gloucestershire, stands a weathered building whose age and legend go hand in hand. The ancient Ram Inn. Built in 1145, its stone walls have witnessed centuries of history, and something else entirely. Believed to sit on a pagan burial ground and intersecting ley lines, then has long been associated with supernatural activity. Former owner John Humphreys claimed it was the most haunted building in Britain, and lived there for decades among its shadows. Visitors have reported encounters with poltergeists, apparitions of monks, and even dark entities within human forms. The bishop's room, once said to be so haunted that even clergy refused to enter, remains a focal point of fear. Furniture moves, cold spots appear, and disembodied voices whisper in the dark. In the cellar, bones were discovered beneath the floor, along with broken daggers. Some believe they were part of ancient rituals, perhaps even sacrifices. The inn is no longer a functioning pub. It's a place of pilgrimage for paranormal researchers and thrill seekers. But even they speak of the weight in the air, the resistance in the walls, as if something does not want them there. And when you leave the Ram Inn, the silence seems louder than before. 28. Bangor Fort in Rajasthan, India, nestled on the edge of the Sariska Tiger Reserve, lies Bangor Fort, a majestic ruin surrounded by legends and forbidden after nightfall. Built in the 17th century, its towering gates and sandstone walls stand largely intact. But beneath its beauty lies a reputation rooted in caution. According to local lore, the fort was cursed by a sorcerer after his love for a princess was spurned. When he died, he cast a spell ensuring that no one would ever live in Bangor again. Soon after, the fort was abandoned. Its population mysteriously vanished. Today, the Archaeological Survey of India has posted signs. Entry is prohibited after sunset. The reason is never officially stated, but villagers nearby have their beliefs: ghostly screams, shadows in the ruins, and the sensation of being watched. Tourists report dizziness, disorientation, and the uncanny feeling of being followed, only to turn and find nothing. Electronic devices malfunction. Even animals refuse to enter after dark. Bangor is not just ruins. It is a place preserved in warning. And as night falls, it seems the curse still stands. 29. Hoia Baciu Forest, just outside Cluj-Napoca in Romania, lies the Hoia Baciu Forest, a dense, twisted expanse often called the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. Its trees curve unnaturally, its soil feels heavy underfoot, and its atmosphere is charged with an unseen energy. The forest gained international attention after a military technician captured a photo of a disc-shaped object hovering above the trees in the 1960s. Since then, it's been a hotspot for reports of UFO sightings, time distortions, and ghostly apparitions. The most unsettling area is the clearing, a perfect circle devoid of vegetation. No trees grow there, and no scientific explanation has held for why. Visitors report nausea, anxiety, and even moments of memory loss within the circle. Locals say people have entered the forest and vanished without a trace. Others return, confused, unable to recall hours or even days. Though researchers have studied the forest's electromagnetic fields and soil composition, no conclusive answers have emerged. Only more questions. In Hoya Baciu, nature feels intelligent and possibly aware. 30. Bell Witch Cave in the hills of Tennessee, near the town of Adams, lies a legend passed down through generations, the tale of the Bell Witch. It's one of America's most enduring hauntings, centered around a cave and a family who lived nearby in the early 1800s. The Bell family, particularly Patriarch John Bell, reportedly suffered relentless torment by an unseen force. It scratched, slapped, and whispered threats. The entity, which identified itself as Kate, claimed to be a witch, and her motives remain a mystery. The phenomena reached a terrifying peak when John Bell died under suspicious circumstances. The spirit is said to have claimed responsibility, boasting that she poisoned him. After his death, the disturbances decreased, but never fully disappeared. Today, the Bell Witch Cave is open to visitors. Though no one lives there now, people speak of strange sounds, rocks falling, laughter from deep inside, and cold drafts in still air. Some leave feeling ill, others experience vivid dreams for days. Despite centuries of study and folklore, no one has proven what haunted the Bells. But in that dark cave, the echoes still linger. And the witch, they say, still speaks when she chooses to. 31. Edinburgh Vaults. Beneath the historic South Bridge in Edinburgh, Scotland, lies a forgotten world, the Edinburgh Vaults. Once used by tradesmen and taverns in the 18th century, the vaults were eventually abandoned, and darkness settled in. They became a haven for the city's poorest residents, but also a space for crime, suffering, and death. Many believe this legacy lingers. Visitors describe disembodied whispers, shadowy figures, and a sense of being followed. Paranormal teams report electromagnetic anomalies and temperature fluctuations. But no history book can fully explain what roams these damp stone chambers. In Edinburgh's underbelly, echoes of the past still breathe. 32. Myrtles Plantation. In the heart of Louisiana stands the Myrtles Plantation, a place both beautiful and burdened. Built in 1796, it has been called one of America's most haunted homes. At the center of its legend is Chloe, a former enslaved woman said to have poisoned members of the family. Sightings of her ghost continue, along with tales of phantom children, cold spots, and a haunted mirror that refuses to stay clean. Historians debate the truth of the stories, yet the experiences of visitors remain strikingly consistent. Whether folklore or fact, something unseen walks the halls of Myrtles. 33. The Tower of London. Guarding the Thames for nearly 1,000 years, the Tower of London has witnessed betrayal, torture, and execution. Its stone walls hold centuries of royal secrets and restless spirits. And Boleyn, beheaded in 1536, is said to walk near the chapel where she's buried, sometimes carrying her head. Others report screams from the Traitor's Gate and the ghostly presence of the princes in the tower. With its deep connection to power and punishment, the tower remains a focal point of British history and a site of lingering sorrow. In the silence between tourists, you might still hear a whisper from the past. 34. Himeji Castle. Himeji Castle, Japan's most iconic fortress, is more than just a marvel of feudal architecture. It is also home to a tale of betrayal and revenge. The legend of Okiku tells of a servant wrongfully accused of losing valuable dishes. Thrown into a well, her spirit reportedly emerged night after night, counting dishes in sorrow. The well still sits beneath the castle. Visitors speak of a weeping voice, shadows near the well, and an eerie chill that clings even in summer. In a place designed for defense, the spirit of injustice still finds no rest. 35 St. Augustine Lighthouse perched on Florida's Atlantic coast. The St. Augustine Lighthouse has stood since 1874, a beacon for sailors and perhaps for spirits. During its construction, several children drowned nearby. Since then, visitors and staff have reported laughter in empty stairwells, shadow figures climbing the tower, and the scent of cigar smoke with no source. Paranormal researchers have documented EVPs, sudden temperature drops, and unexplained footsteps on the iron stairs. Whether residual energy or active presence, the light shines through more than fog. It cuts through time itself. Ready for scripts 36 to 40 next. Shall I continue? You said, yes, ChatGPT said. Here are scripts 36 to 40 in the same documentary-style format. 36. The Ridges, Athens Lunatic Asylum. Nestled in the hills of Athens, Ohio, the Ridges, once the Athens Lunatic Asylum, stands as a relic of 19th century mental health care. Its brick halls once housed thousands, many forgotten and unmarked graves nearby. Among its most chilling tales is that of a female patient who vanished in 1978. Weeks later, her body was found in an abandoned ward. The floor beneath her remains still bears the stain of her final moments, untouched by time or cleaning. Now owned by Ohio University, students and staff speak of apparitions in old wings, flickering lights, and a heavy, lingering sadness. Here, the silence isn't empty, it remembers. 37. Fort George, Nova Scotia. At the edge of Halifax, Fort George, known today as the Halifax Citadel, tells a story of colonial defense and unexplained disturbances. Built in the 1800s, the fort once housed soldiers who lived under strict discipline and harsh conditions. Today, visitors walk through its tunnels and ramparts not only to explore history, but to confront the past's unease. Uniformed shadows have been seen in guard rooms, and the sound of boots echo in corridors long emptied. Paranormal investigators cite cold spots and spectral voices. Historians acknowledge strange patterns, but offer no certain cause. Above ground, it's a museum. Below, something remains on watch. 38. Glen Tavern Inn in Santa Paula, California. The Glen Tavern Inn bridges the gap between luxury and lore. Built in 1911, it served oilmen, film stars, and, some say, those hiding from the law. Legend claims the third floor once operated as a speakeasy and brothel during Prohibition. Guests have reported apparitions of a man in a top hat and a woman in white drifting through rooms and hallways. Room 307, in particular, is known for whispers, lights switching on and off, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. Where stories were once exchanged over whiskey, the spirits now linger longer than the guests. 39. Chateau de Chateaubriant. Deep in France's Loire Valley stands a Chateau de Chateaubriant, a medieval stronghold turned Renaissance residence. With its rich history comes tales of sorrow. Françoise de Foix, mistress to King Francis I, is said to have died mysteriously within the chateau. Some whisper of royal jealousy, others of murder. Her ghost reportedly appears every October, pacing the halls in a flowing white gown. The castle, with its towers and tapestries, is steeped in history. But the echo of soft footsteps and flickering candlelight speak to a presence untouched by time. Each autumn, the chateau remembers its most tragic love. 40. Airedale Asylum, Victoria, Australia, holds the remains of Airedale Asylum, once the largest mental institution in the Southern Hemisphere. Built in 1867, it housed over 13,000 patients throughout its grim operational years. Within its sprawling corridors, treatments ranged from early electroshock to lobotomies. Death was a frequent visitor. Some say it never left. Tour guides report strange sensations, objects moving without cause, and sudden chills in sealed rooms. The ghost of Nurse Carrie, who reportedly died on the stairs, is still seen in her white uniform. In Airedale, it's not only the architecture that endures, but something less easily explained. Shall I continue with scripts 41 to 45? You said, yes, ChatGPT said. Here are scripts 41 to 45, continuing in the same atmospheric documentary narration style. 41. Ballygally Castle overlooking the coast of Northern Ireland. Ballygally Castle blends centuries of history with tales that resist explanation. Built in 1625, it has witnessed sieges, power struggles, and a haunting that persists. The spirit of Lady Isabella Shaw is said to roam its halls. Legend tells of her being locked in a tower by her husband, where she either fell or was pushed to her death. Guests report gentle knocks on doors, a sudden chill, and the sense of being watched by unseen eyes. The castle now operates as a hotel, but its original inhabitants may still walk the same corridors. In Ballygally, some guests never check out. 42. Rose Hall, great house on the northern coast of Jamaica. Rose Hall stands in grandeur, but beneath its beauty lies the legend of Annie Palmer, the White Witch. Said to have practiced voodoo and murdered 3 husbands, she reportedly met a violent end herself. Whether myth or memory, her presence endures. Visitors describe cold drafts in hot rooms, ghostly figures on the stairs, and disembodied voices near the old dungeons. Rose Hall's history is documented, but its darker stories remain part of the atmosphere, woven into every stone and shadow. The witch may be gone, but the whispers of her power still linger. 43. Poveglia Island in the Venetian Lagoon sits a forbidden patch of land, Poveglia Island. Once a quarantine zone during plague outbreaks and later a psychiatric hospital, its soil holds the remains of thousands. Local legend claims the asylum's doctor conducted crude experiments before falling or jumping from the bell tower. That bell hasn't rung in years, yet some say they still hear it. Now closed to the public, the island is shrouded in fog and silence. Boats rarely approach, and few dare to stay long. It's more than abandoned, it feels forsaken. 44. Teatro Tapia in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Teatro Tapia still hosts performances, but not all its patrons are living. Built in 1832, it's the oldest freestanding drama stage still in use in the region. Actors have reported hearing applause in an empty auditorium, spotting a woman in a long gown watching from the balcony, and encountering voices whispering backstage when no one is there. Some believe it's the spirit of an actress who died during a performance, determined to continue her role beyond the curtain call. Here, the stage is always set for something unseen. 45. Fort Mifflin on the banks of the Delaware River stands Fort Mifflin, a Revolutionary War stronghold turned spectral landmark. Built in 1771, it's the site of some of the war's fiercest fighting and some of its quietest hauntings. The cries of a long-dead woman, known only as the Screaming Lady, have echoed through the fort. Other sightings include phantom soldiers, flickering lanterns, and unexplained cannon blasts. Maintained today as a historic site, Fort Mifflin holds reenactments of past battles. But some spirits never left the field. Even in peace, the echoes of war endure. Ready to continue with scripts 46 to 50? You said, yes, ChatGPT said. Here are scripts 46 to 50, continuing in the professional documentary tone. 46. Banff Springs Hotel amid the Canadian Rockies stands the Grand Banff Springs Hotel. Elegant, imposing, and some say haunted. Built in 1888, it's hosted royalty and travelers alike. But it's the guests who never left that draw quiet attention. One spirit is believed to be a bride who died on the marble staircase. Sightings describe her veil flowing down the corridor, sometimes accompanied by the soft echo of footsteps. Another tale involves a bellhop who assists guests, then vanishes without a trace. Despite modern renovations, Some parts of the hotel resist the present. In Banff, the past quietly checks in and stays. 47. Hoia Baciu Forest. In the heart of Transylvania lies the Hoia Baciu Forest, often dubbed the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. Its trees twist unnaturally, and technology malfunctions without warning. But the unease here runs deeper. Visitors report lights in the sky, sudden nausea, and feelings of dread. In the forest center lies a barren clearing where nothing grows. Some call it a portal, others a wound in the earth. Despite numerous investigations, no scientific explanation has held firm. What draws and unnerves so many in Hoia Baciu remains uncertain. Among these trees, even silence feels like a presence. 48. Fairmont Empress Hotel. Rising along Victoria's inner harbor, the Fairmont Empress exudes elegance. Yet behind its stately charm are stories that linger far beyond checkout. One recurring figure is a maid in early 20th century uniform, seen cleaning rooms that no longer exist. Another is the ghost of an elderly man who knocks on doors and vanishes down hallways. Renovations often stir activity. Lights flicker, footsteps echo in locked areas, and cold spots appear in warm rooms. The hotel's past guests may have left, but some impressions endure. Luxury meets the lingering unknown at the Empress. 49. Aokigahara Forest. At the base of Japan's Mount Fuji lies Aokigahara, known as the Sea of Trees. Its beauty masks a heavy silence, one that has earned it another name, the Suicide Forest. The dense growth muffles sound. Trails end without warning. Within this isolation, countless lives have quietly ended. Locals speak of eerie, restless spirits wandering the forest. Despite signs offering help, the atmosphere is still. Searchers report cold breezes without wind, voices where there should be none, and a sense of not being alone. In Aokigahara, nature doesn't just surround, it consumes. 50. Old Changi Hospital on Singapore's coast. Old Changi Hospital stands derelict, its windows shattered, its halls hollow. Built in the 1930s, it served both the British military and later, the Japanese occupation. During World War II, the site became associated with interrogation and torture. Today, stories abound. Phantom patients, flickering lights, and the cries of long-dead soldiers. Urban explorers report being followed by footsteps that never match their own. Locals avoid the site after dark. Authorities have sealed entrances, but curiosity still finds a way in. Even in ruin, the hospital feels disturbingly alive. 51. Edinburgh Vaults. Beneath the bustling streets of Edinburgh lies a hidden world, the South Bridge Vaults. Constructed in the late 18th century, these underground chambers were initially used for storage and workshops. But as the city grew, the vaults fell into neglect, and darkness took root. By the 1800s, the vaults became home to the city's poorest residents. Disease, crime, and death were commonplace in the damp, airless corridors. Some sections were sealed off entirely, abandoned to silence. Today, visitors report hearing whispers, footsteps, and disembodied cries. Tour guides speak of a shadow figure known as Mr. Boots, said to lurk in the far chambers, always just out of sight. Cold spots and sudden unease are frequent, even in summer. Though archaeologists have unearthed personal belongings and remnants of life below, much of what happened in the vaults remains undocumented. The stone walls absorbed it all: joy, fear, and suffering. And in the stillness of the underground, that history breathes. 52. Beechworth Lunatic Asylum. In the quiet hills of Victoria, Australia, Beechworth Lunatic Asylum stands as a relic of an era when mental health was poorly understood and often feared. Opened in 1867, the facility operated for over a century, but its legacy is shadowed by tragedy. More than 3,000 people are said to have died within its walls. Patients were admitted with or without consent, and treatments range from the ineffective to the inhumane. Restraints, isolation, and electroshock were common. Today, visitors and staff alike report voices echoing through the halls, doors slamming without cause, and ghostly figures moving across open rooms. The women's ward is especially active, with accounts of sobbing and flickering lights. Tourists entering the former surgery room often complain of dizziness or nausea, symptoms unexplained by any structural cause. Though Beechworth has been partially restored for historical tours, the sense of unease persists. The past is not left quietly, and those who walk its halls today often leave with more questions than answers. 53. Raynham Hall in Norfolk, England. Raynham Hall exudes Georgian elegance. But beneath its refined beauty lies one of the most iconic ghost stories in British history, the tale of the Brown Lady. In 1936, two photographers from Country Life magazine captured what is now one of the most famous paranormal images ever taken, a figure descending the main staircase, draped in mist, wearing what appears to be a brown brocade gown. The legend tells of Lady Dorothy Walpole, who died under mysterious circumstances in the 1700s. Some say she was imprisoned by her husband. Others whisper of betrayal and heartbreak. Over the years, guests and staff have reported cold spots, unexplainable shadows, and the sound of footsteps on empty floors. The Brown Lady, they say, is always seen in silence, her presence more felt than heard. Raynham Hall remains a private residence, but the image and the atmosphere of quiet sorrow continue to stir curiosity. Some say she's still waiting. Others say she never left. 54. Fort Mifflin on the banks of the Delaware River in Philadelphia stands Fort Mifflin, a Revolutionary War stronghold still largely intact. It's the only fort in the United States still maintained as a historic site where battles once raged and lives were lost. During its time, Fort Mifflin was used as a prison, a hospital, and a defensive bastion. Soldiers endured bombardment, isolation, and disease. The echoes of that suffering remain. Visitors describe hearing cannon fire when no reenactments are scheduled. In the casemates, deep underground, voices speak in languages long dead. Shadowy figures move along the walls, and in the blacksmith shop, tools clang without a visible hand. One spirit, known as the Screaming Woman, is heard crying out near the old prison cells. Her identity remains a mystery, but her presence is chillingly constant. Despite years of study, no full explanation has emerged. At Fort Mifflin, the past isn't a story, it's an ongoing presence. And each wind that moves through the stone corridors might carry a voice from the other side. 55. Ballygally Castle on the rugged coast of Northern Ireland. Ballygally Castle overlooks the sea, its towers steeped in both history and haunting. Built in 1625, the castle is now a hotel. But guests check in knowing its most famous resident never checked out. Lady Isabel Shaw was reportedly locked in a tower room by her husband and eventually fell, or was pushed, from a window. Her spirit, locals say, never left. Guests staying in the ghost room report the sound of soft knocking, sudden chills, and a woman's voice calling out. Staff have seen her wandering the halls, often near the original tower. But Isabel isn't the only presence. Others claim to hear children laughing, furniture moving on its own, and a spectral figure dressed in 17th century clothing staring from windows. Despite its calm appearance, the castle holds a stillness that hints at its layered past, a place where stories haven't ended, just grown quieter. And in the still of the night, some say, you can hear them begin again. 56. Humberstone and Lenoria. In Chile's vast Atacama Desert lie the ghost towns of Humberstone and Lenoria, abandoned nitrate mining settlements where the sun never hides, but the shadows still linger. Founded in the 19th century, these towns were once home to thousands. But the industry collapsed, and by the mid-20th century, the desert reclaimed them. What remains are rusted structures, sun-bleached homes, and tales of the restless dead. Local legends speak of the dead walking the streets, especially near the cemetery of Lenoria, where open graves and exposed bones lie untouched in the dry earth. Visitors report footsteps behind them, whispers on the wind, and faces peering from dark windows. Even skeptics admit there's a presence here, something that doesn't feel quite right under the blazing sun. Chile's government has declared the towns a UNESCO heritage site, but no amount of preservation can silence the feeling that the past is walking just a few steps behind. 57. Château de Brissac in the Loire Valley of France stands the towering Château de Brissac, once a fortress, now a stately home. But behind its gilded halls and velvet drapery is the legend of La Dame Verte, the Green Lady. According to lore, Charlotte of Valois was murdered in the chateau during a fit of jealousy by her husband in the 15th century. Her body was hidden, but her spirit remained. Today, guests and residents alike report hearing her moaning through the halls at night. Some have even seen her, dressed in green, her face distorted, her presence chilling but not violent. The chateau's owners acknowledge the haunting but continue to live there, as their family has for generations. Tours are offered, and many leave with a sense of awe, not only from the beauty but from the tension in the air. At Château de Brissac, history is layered, and some layers are not at rest. 58. The Paris Catacombs. Beneath the City of Light lies a world of darkness, the Paris Catacombs. Stretching over 200 miles, these underground ossuaries hold the bones of more than 6 million souls, stacked in haunting symmetry. Created in the 18th century to address overflowing cemeteries, the catacombs became a subterranean labyrinth of mortality. And though only a fraction is open to the public, that is enough to feel the weight of history and something more. Visitors speak of being watched, of footsteps echoing in empty tunnels, and of sudden disorientation. Some explorers have entered restricted sections and never returned. Their stories, if they survive, are fragmented and strange. Bones rest in silence, but silence in the catacombs is rarely complete. In Paris, the living walk above. Below, the dead remain. And perhaps they're not alone.